Attorney's in a sidebar right now as we see that Trayvon Martin's mom, Sybrina Fulton, has been recalled to the stand. I want to interrupt apologize ahead of time for our guests if we interrupt. That means we've got to get back into court. We do not want to miss a moment of this. Again, with us, Jason Johnson. He's a professor, also has spent time in Sanford talking with those in the community, their thoughts, their feelings, and wrote a very insightful article, HLNTV.com, as well, and Esther Panich, criminal defense attorney. Esther Panich, why recall Sybrina Fulton at this point?
I'm not exactly sure. It's an interesting it's an interesting development to call a witness back before rebuttal. So usually you recall your witnesses after something the defense has done or said to mitigate what or rehabilitate your witness. So I'm not exactly sure why they're calling her. It seems like the defense was trying to get the door open to introduce some of Trayvon's background and history and some of the pictures that the judge has refused to allow in. But we're not exactly sure. I guess when they start asking questions, we'll know exactly why they thought they had to recall her at this time.
And on that point, Jason, weigh in. We heard questions from Mark O'Mara to the brother Javaris Fulton about Facebook, Twitter, and how much, I think the questions hinted at how much time he'd really spent with Trayvon, right?
Right, because what we've just seen here is a nice college-educated family of African Americans. And you notice that O'Mara's whole goal is to say, look, Trayvon isn't necessarily as nice as the family. You notice that he said, when did your father leave the home? He didn't leave the home. They got divorced. He tried to say, well, you didn't have the same kind of friends as him. He's trying to bring people back to this idea that Trayvon Martin might have been the bad son and that this kid can't really reflect on him. So it's an interesting sort of cultural and character argument. I don't know if the jury's going to buy it, but that's what O'Mara's trying to do.
Okay. How does he get there, though, Esther? I mean, to Jason's point, there's still quite the gap to get there and to get anything in of Trayvon Martin's past, which, again, the court ruled ahead of time. You can't bring any of that in, pictures, things like that.
I agree. And the defense can't open their own door. They have to wait for the prosecution to open the door, and it doesn't sound like the prosecutors did. So this whole thing is very curious why they're calling her back so quickly. And but I agree with Jason. O'Mara was totally trying to differentiate Trayvon from the rest of his family.
Got it. And again, as we look at Sybrina Fulton, if you missed it, she was very strong earlier, had to listen to the 911 call, heard the screams in the background and the gunshot, and then she was asked, whose voice is it? And she said unequivocally, that's her son, Trayvon Martin. The defense and Esther, how do you think Mark O'Mara did? That's quite a tightrope, because you cannot attack Sybrina Fulton in this, but he's trying to go with, you want to believe it's your son, is where he was trying to go, right?
Right, but I think that's a given. Any mother who's going to testify on behalf of the state to say that that's their son, everybody knows that that's what she wants to believe. So he doesn't really have to explore any type of bias on her behalf, because it exists just by her nature of being up there. And he does have to walk a tightrope. You cannot attack the victim's mother, who is herself a victim of this crime. So, he is trying to do as good a job as he can to protect the interests of his client and at the same time not alienate the jury.
Mm-hmm. Jason, how do you think Mark O'Mara did on that front? Walk that tightrope. Did you find it jarring at all? Did he cross a line, or did he just do what he had to do to try and represent his client, George Zimmerman?
Yeah, the whole sort of scheduling of this doesn't make any sense. I thought O'Mara, who's been great throughout this case, I think this was terrible. I think, look, you're trying to massage the victim's mother into saying, I was coached to say it was my son. That's where he was trying to go, and that doesn't make any sense. And I think, again, from a character standpoint, if I were the prosecution should have probably brought up Sybrina Fulton and the brother earlier in the trial to sort of set the precedent for who Trayvon Martin was, because we're just now hearing that he's from this kind of family. I think they probably should have brought this up sooner.
Interesting. Again, as you talk about where we're heading with this trial, the state expected to rest today, and the defense could begin their case later this afternoon. Esther Panich, when we talk about how the prosecution is going to wrap up, do you end with mom and brother, or do you have to bring in the medical examiner who actually examined Trayvon Martin's body?
I think at this point you should end with the family, because that's what the jury will remember at the end of your case. I also think now, in retrospect, listening to the testimony of Sybrina and the brother, that they should have been brought up immediately, and the state could have used that information in their opening. And I don't know why they didn't frame Trayvon as coming from this family when they opened and set the tone for what this case was about and who the victim was. So, we'll see what the defense is going to do, but I think that the prosecution is going to go out on this witness. It's just a little awkward that they're dividing her testimony between calling her initially and then recalling her now.
Again, that's a live look at Sybrina Fulton on the stand when she begins to give testimony once again. We'll definitely break in. You're not going to miss a moment here on HLN. We have again with us Esther Panish, criminal defense attorney, Jason Johnson. He's a professor, also spent time in Sanford. Are they back in, guys? Are they still in? Okay, they're back in. We don't want to miss a moment, so let's get back into court.